Good morning, everybody. I need everybody except the camera people on the left, on the right, and in the back to leave the room now. Through the front door to your right, please. Everybody needs to leave the room. Sir? No, you need to leave the room. We are completely clearing the rooms. Only the camera persons with the fixed cameras. Those are two here on the left, one here on the right are allowed to stay. Everybody else, please clear the room now. For your information, also accredited press has to leave the room now. We're completely clearing the room except for the fixed camera positions.
Perhaps we need to say it in Spanish.
Yeah.
Buenos días. Todos los asistentes de la sala deberán salir por la puerta de aquí de mi izquierda, por favor. Y luego volver a entrar si están acreditados con pase de prensa. Gracias. Sí, pero hay una línea para entrar, entonces... I am sorry, I was told opposite, please. She was the one who told me this, my supervisor. I told her, I am sorry.
Hay algunos que han dejado las cosas, ¿no?
Sí, pero que no sabemos si va a poder entrar todo el mundo.
May I have your attention again, please? Take all your belongings out of the room. There is no reserving of any seat for anybody.
Can you please say that people who come in cannot...
Also, please, there is no build-up of any cameras on the side. There is no standing on the side, only in the back of the room.
se apagan en toda la conferencia. Y luego, mira las baterías, es que solo tiene. Mira la batería que tiene.
I introduce. Okay. 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 And I just. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So. Yeah. Are you all ready? Are you all ready? Are you good? Phones out. Phones out. Are you all good? Phones on silent. Phones out. Okay. Good.
And when I serve you, and then I talk, and what happens? I'm nervous.
Me too. We're all nervous. We got this.
Okay. Hello. Thank you so much for coming to this press conference. Maybe some of the people in the front want to sit down. Cool. So before we start, I would like to ask the Sustain Us Indigenous Youth Delegation to open up the space. Thank you so much. It is an honor having you. My name is Luisa Neubauer. I'm with Fridays for Future Germany, and I will moderate today's session. We are honored, Greta and me are honored to have such an incredible group of people with us today. Thank you so much for listening to all of us. Greta, it's your turn.
Yes, so we have noticed there is some media attention, and we thought then it is our moral duty to use that media attention. Luisa and I want to use our platform and to lend our voices to those who need to tell their stories. So me and Luisa will not be speaking today. Instead, we will let others speak. We are privileged, and our stories have been told many times over and over again. And it is not our stories that needs to be told and listened to. It is the others, it is the people, especially from the global south and from indigenous communities who needs to tell their stories. Because the climate emergency is not just something that will impact us in the future. It is not something that will have an impact on children living today when they grow up. It is already affecting countless of people today. People are suffering and dying from it today. So that's why we have created this event to hope that it will be some kind of platform to share the stories that needs to be shared.
Thank you so much, Greta. So for that, we invited 6 former youth activists from around the world to share their stories, and we thank you for respecting them and listening to them very carefully. We are very privileged to be surrounded by such incredible people, and to start off, I would like to invite Carl and Zacharias from the Marshall Islands. It is an honor having you. It's your time to speak.
Yahweh and greetings from the Marshall Islands. Before I came to Madrid, exactly 2 weeks ago, I experienced 16-foot swells that forced 200 people from their homes. Not only do we have inundations, but we also have the dengue fever epidemic, the flu. And I know just recently, our Pacific neighbors in Samoa are fighting the measles that took 70 lives, 30 of which are children under the age of 4. These are illnesses linked to and made worse by climate change. We've been told that if we want to stay in our islands, we'd have to adapt and elevate, and with migration as the only plan B. We're having to deal with these issues that we in the first place did not create. And may I remind you, the Marshall Islands' contribution to climate change is only 0.00001% of the world's emissions. This is why our country is pushing for a social media campaign called Mad for Survival, and we encourage everyone to join in. My home is only 2 meters above water. With the threats of climate change, we'd lose 2 meters of our culture, our Yahweh, our Manat, our Roro, our Beat, our language, 2 meters of our legends. This is why we created a Youth Leaders Coalition that has the youth create innovative ways to fight climate change and lobby them towards our leaders. A team of students came up with a new sustainable design for a seawall that our Minister of Environment, David Paul, has shown interest towards. This is why our youth should be more involved. When you are in trouble, you find new solutions to face it. And our youth has proven to do so. This is why I'm here, to represent them and their ideas, to be a part of the generation that's going to end the fight against climate change, to voice out the reality of the future that the Marshall Islands is facing, to tell you that we don't want to lose our only 2 meters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colin. Next, we are very, very happy to be joined by Kisha Ira Muyanya from the Philippines. It's your turn to speak. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning, everyone. I am here in front of you for ocean emergency and climate action. I can still remember the calm waves, the ocean in harmony, the colorful corals, the tropical and endemic fishes, the diverse and rich life underwater. But now, the ocean, the heart of the planet, my home, my comfort zone is badly affected by climate emergency. And the comfort zone that I once knew, the playground that I once knew, is not the same anymore. In this time of crisis, I want you to desperately seek for alternatives because solutions will take time and we have to start from somewhere right now. Living in one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change, surrounded by water where 45% of the population depends on marine resources to thrive and survive. As the global center of marine biodiversity, we have a lot to offer, but what happened now? We have massive decline of fisheries catch, inevitable sea level rise with rising of temperatures badly influencing marine wildlife and blue habitats, saltwater intrusion, massive drought including drinking water shortages, and food security. Give us the very reason to take heed of all this and from there create a wholesome and real action. Sadly, the most vulnerable nation to risk this climate change, according to Global Peace Index of 2019, is none other than my very own country, the Philippines. 47% of the population is in regions highly exposed to climate risk, such as floods, tsunami, tropical cyclones, drought, and earthquakes. 971 million people at risk undergoing extreme weather events and peacefulness breakdowns in the impending decades. These environmental concerns can indirectly increase the likelihood of violent conflict through livelihood stability and security, resource availability, and even migration. The Philippines has been making legislative measures in response to climate change, which is a really good foundation. However, real-time, robust, and lasting action is needed. To the global leaders, this is your time to do the right decision. We are talking about life and survival here. This is supposed to be a blue cup. Please walk the talk and make it as blue as possible as you can. Every second is a time for action. And we are here with the young activists all over the world because we are action.
Thank you so much, Kisha. We are inviting next to speak Ashok Makichan from Moscow, Russia. Thank you so much for joining today.
A year ago, I didn't know anything about climate crisis, and now I am spending all my time trying to do something. And next Friday will be my 40 week, and 41 week I will have a trial for peaceful protest on October 25. Yeah, most likely I will be arrested for a few days, but it's not important. A year ago, Greta Thunberg said in her speech that our house is on fire. Everyone thought that it was a metaphor. But then, during the summer, whole Siberia were burning, rainforest of Amazonia, Congo. It was not a metaphor, it was real. You have seen everything: extinction of species, floodings, hunger, and death. Is it not enough for you? When Hitler and Stalin were invading the countries and killing people, we did nothing. When Hitler invaded Europe, we did nothing. Then he almost invaded the whole world. Then people stopped him. Not countries, guns, tanks, but people. for their children's sake. Why I am an activist? It's not because of my future. It's because they are pure, wonderful girls and boys. They deserve a future. They deserve a better world. I am from Russia, where everyone can be arrested for anything. But I am not afraid to be arrested. I am afraid not to do enough. And I think, and I believe that we can change everything, because behind us there are millions of people. Behind us there is a science, and activism is a solution. I started climate strikes, single strikes, and I was alone. Yeah, but I never been alone. And now I am not alone even in Russia. We are not going to give up. We're getting stronger by the hour, because we have to do stronger. But we need your help. You need everyone's help. Because, yeah, we're watching you, but we're helping you. So please, act now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashok. Please report on the ongoing human rights violation in Russia. People like Ashok shouldn't be arrested for protesting. Next, I'm very honored to introduce Rose Whipple from the Santi Dakota and Ho-Chunk Nations. It's an incredible honor to have you with us here today. The word is yours.
I remember the sunshine on my skin as I stood at the headwaters of the Mississippi River, the drinking source for over 18 million humans. Here in Minnesota, I joined other indigenous youth to prepare for our month-long canoe journey through our stolen ancestral homelands. We paddled to raise awareness of the Line 3 tar sands oil pipeline that threatens to devastate our communities. We dipped our cupped hands in the river, sipping the clean water. This is the same sacred river where my Dakota ancestors have been harvesting our sacred manumin for thousands of years. This river is important and sacred not only to my ancestors, but for my people still to this day. We happily canoed down this river for weeks, smiling and laughing, sharing our dreams for a fossil fuel world. Soon after, everything changed. Things were darker. The sky, the water, the air. Our group came underneath the shadow of a factory looming over our lands like a nightmare. Our sacred waters were sick, our hope melting into despair, and it was then that we took action. In a historic case against the pipeline, we came together as youth to intervene with 5 other tribes to fight for justice. Although we fought for our river, begged them to leave our waters and lands alone, to say no to the Line 3 pipeline, it wasn't enough. The pipeline was unanimously approved. We have been fighting these extractive projects through the US court system, but this colonial institution continuously values corporate profit over indigenous lives. Today, this injustice and my hope are the fires that have brought me to this room. Hamitakiapi, Rose Whipple-Amakiapi, Santi Hamataha. Hello, my relatives. My name is Rose Whipple, and I am 18 years old. I am attending these global negotiations with the first ever Sustainers Indigenous Youth Delegation from the United States. We're here to share these stories, to share our prayers, and bring a frontline fight to the halls of the United Nations. Our people come from many different lands, waters, and cultures, yet each of us are here together, calling on the strength of our ancestors to remind us of our commitments to future generations. Our movements for the protection of our sacred sites and lands sound like Protect Mauna Kea, No Shasta Dam Raise in California, Stand with Bears Ears in Utah, and Demilitarize Guam. Our movements for our waters sound like Stop Jordan Cove in Oregon, Save Bristol Bay in Alaska, No Keystone XL pipeline and no DAPL expansion across the Great Plains, and especially no Line 3 pipeline in Minnesota. The climate crisis is more than a discussion about a 1.5 degrees Celsius. It also looks like stolen and caged children at the US-Mexico border. It looks like missing and murdered indigenous women. People are dying. Indigenous land defenders are being murdered. The climate crisis is a spiritual crisis for our entire world. Our solutions must weave science with spirituality and traditional ecological knowledge with technology. Our movements must be bigger than recycling and braver than holding signs. It is up to each and every one of us to build movements that center the rights of indigenous peoples, healing and justice for the next 7 generations. It is time for us all to reconnect with Mother Earth. It is time to remember how to listen to her, to guide our climate solutions. Destroy white supremacy.
Thank you so much, Rose. This is so important to hear. I'm so happy to pass on the word to Hilda Flavia Nakabuye from Uganda. It's fantastic to have you here, Hilda. Please let us know what you have to say.
When I see the impacts of the climate crisis, especially in Africa and in particular Uganda, where I come from, many questions come to my mind. It a bit reminds me of the rampant racism and apartheid my ancestors endured. We are suffering severe effects of climate change, as if coming from the global south is a mortal sin, with no or very little action from developing countries. I've come to think that the climate crisis is another form of environmental racism and apartheid. We are deeply cut by the actions, words, and greed of those in power. The cuts are bringing scars to our own unborn children in the coming generations. Our hearts are bleeding with fire. I thought this was the best time for developed countries to exercise their moral duty and clean up their mess, but they do not care. How many more lives must we lose for the world to take action? Which type of storm or what flavor of floods must Africa taste for us to get climate justice? Every Friday, we continue to step out of our comfort zones by missing classes to stress the climate issue. How many more classes must we skip for the world to know we are suffering the most? Developed countries must be ashamed of themselves, given the amount of carbon they emit compared to what Africa is emitting. We almost emit nothing, but we are suffering the most. You have dreams, but we have dreams too. But these dreams have turned into nightmares. Nightmares of our own future, which is being negotiated right now by the world leaders without our say. Same way it is being destroyed by the same fossil fuel industries funding and present at COP, even as I speak now. If we don't clean up our emissions or solve the climate crisis as a global community, then those climate impacts are going to get worse and worse, and millions of lives are at stake. We need concrete action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hilda. Please think about her words. And finally, we are incredibly happy to have Angela Valenzuela from Chile with us, the country where we should be speaking now, actually. Thank you so much for coming to us to hear this panel today, Angela. Thank you so much for representing Chile here.
The cameras of the world don't often look at the global south. In the case of Chile, since COP25 was suspended in Santiago, most mainstream media forgot about us. Millions of people marching on the streets for a dignified life. It's not about 30 pesos. It's about 30 years of democratic governments that failed to protect us and to listen to our demands. Chile woke up. We said enough. We can't sustain a system that sacrifices people and drives the climate crisis for the benefit of a few. As a response to the unrest in Chile, the government declared a state of emergency. And curfews for the first week. But we are fearless. We continue to flood the streets, even if we are risking our lives. We are redefining our future and pushing the limits of what we think is possible. Chile woke up, and the world is waking up too. It's outrageous to arrive at COP in Madrid and see how the Chilean government cleans its image with empty words while committing human rights violations every day. This must stop now. How can we even think about ambitious action, ambitious climate action, when this government is spreading fear, shooting and blinding the eyes of people protesters? In order to address the climate crisis, human rights must be protected. While countries congratulate each other for their weak commitments, the world is literally burning out. We only have a few years to stay below 1.5 degrees of warming. We are clear on what needs to be done. The solutions are simple. We lack the political commitment. Over the last week of negotiations at COP, governments are discussing the wrong thing. Instead of talking about how to transition from fossil fuels, COP25 is focused on finding elaborate ways for rich, industrialized countries to be able to carry on polluting while pretending not to. As we know well in Chile, neoliberalism is a dead cult. As we know from past attempts, the market will not save us from the climate crisis. In fact, the opposite. The conversations that governments should be having are actually about the real current impacts of climate change that communities around the world are facing, like my friends have described now. People are already dying in the climate emergency, and these communities need support. But again, it seems that some lives matter more than others. The rich and powerful seem happy to sacrifice our communities in the pursuit of profit. So here at COP, back in Chile and around the world, people will continue to rise against governments that do not represent us. Our lives are not up for negotiation. Our planet is not for sale.
Thank you so much, Angela, for your words. I am not too sure if we have time for questions. Is there anyone from the UNFCCC who could give us a quick idea if we can extend time in this room? Could there anyone give us a signal? Okay, so I guess we just keep going until, well, we get a signal from someone. So what's happening now is we have 2 minutes. 2 minutes or 2 questions? 2 questions, excellent. So please think about them carefully. We have time for 2 questions. Please address your questions at the entire panel. We are in this together and we consider ourselves to fight the same fight. It's just that some of us are fighting the fight they never started and sacrifice them with their lives. After the 2 questions, we will have very short logistical announcements and a closing prayer from sustainers. So please, yes, 2 questions, please, from you here at the front, please. One.
My question is for Rose. If you can talk about... Hi, I'm Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! My question is for Rose and for Greta. You opened the conference with indigenous youth. Greta, you've traveled the world and the United States, and you've gone to the Standing Rock Reservation, the Pine Ridge Reservation. I wanted to ask you why indigenous resistance is so important to you. And Rose, if you can talk about what you're demanding of the US government now.
It is so incredibly important that we listen to indigenous people because they are suffering and their rights are being violated across the world, and they are also among the ones who are being hit the most and quickest by the climate and environmental emergency. And also they have been living in balance with nature for hundreds of years. So we have, I think, we need to listen to them because they have valuable knowledge we need in this crucial time of crisis.
Thank you, Greta. Rose?
Thank you for your question. That is a question that we're never asked. We're never asked what we want and what we need. Because right now, for over 500 years, we have been on the front lines dying, risking our lives. We are still in prison today as political prisoners who are fighting for our lands, for our waters. And I think right now, indigenous people worldwide, in general, are just asking to be listened to be stood with, and not to be in the background, to be in the front. Because we are on the front lines doing this work today, right now. We deserve to be listened to, and we also deserve to have our lands back.
Thank you so much, Rose. And we have time for one last question, maybe at the other panelists. So every question for, yes, everyone else here. I think you over there.
Yes, please.
We face the climate crisis. We are above 1 and 2 meters. Okay, let me start again. I have been asked. I'm Willie Losi, the Kingdom of Tonga. May I take this opportunity to speak on the behalf of the children of the ocean. That's our voices. This is real. The crisis is real. We are on the forefront of it. Whatever you're doing on this side of the world, we are 1 meter and 2 meters. We are the second vulnerable to any natural disasters. If the Arctic keeps melting, we are sinking. The 100,000 years of history of our ocean, we're going to go down. And let me clarify this with Professor Ebeli Hawafa, one of our great sociologists. The ocean does not divide us. It's uniting us. Our voice is very simple. We talk on humanity, on kindness and love. For the policy makers, we face the crisis, real crisis. It's not something that you can dreaming about, you cannot see that. I'll invite you to come to Tonga, experience the cyclone number 6 is gonna hit Tonga this year or next year. See if you may be able to see the reality of what we have. But that's my kindness invitation for all of you. And I speak on behalf of my son named Aliki Wilson Lucy. He's 12 years old. All of us want the best for our children. We're all one on one of this. And I salute to you, Greta, for what you're doing. It's make the world take action on the right way. And may you have our blessings to keep doing what you're doing. Si o tutua o whātu. Mahalo apito.
Thank you for sharing your message. Do we have time? No more. Okay, no more questions. But good news. There's the possibility to ask the panelists for interviews. We have press people. Could you wave your hands? There's Daniel. The press people from the Youth Climate Movement. There's Daniel. There is Leonie. There is Rashika Masaya, and then there is Eric, who will be outside to coordinate any interviews you might have with Carlin, Keisha, Ashak, Rosehilde, and Angela. And for us, there is just 2 announcements to remain. One is there will be a Fridays for Future action happening at 12 o'clock outside Hall 4, a human chain. Please join us. There's also a press conference happening at the Social Summit at 12 o'clock today. And Greta and me are inviting for a second press conference tomorrow, for which the date and time will be confirmed. We also invite you to join us there. And yes, so I am again hugely honored and privileged to invite the Sustainers, Youth Indigenous Climate activists, to join us. Please let us respect this time. We need to close the space together. Thank you so much for coming here. And thank you for everyone here in the audience for joining us today.
Here. Inhale.
Inhale.
And exhale.
Exhale.
Thank you.
I want to pray for all of you. I'm going to pray in my native tongue because I think that's really important. Yeah. So I just wanted to pray for Hitatina na haben, Hisusbaya na aset na hinana na hate nicha. Hello, my name is Big Win. I'm from the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming in the United States, and I'm going to be praying in my native language for our people, for the climate, for the waters. Nihawa na wahanihi yasehi niwahai hata wahanihan nuhu hatdana nebasihi hathet na nehisiti hita bahat de hida awu hawuni hanku hajesabedita jeshet shanihi ho.
If I make one last announcement, we invited you to come here to talk about the stories that aren't heard. So please write about them, report about them, that are the people that need to be heard. Greta and me, we've shared our stories. We need to face the stories, the real stories of people struggling every day in a fight they've never started. Thank you so much for taking this seriously and respecting us. Thanks.